Welcome to Mid-Maryland Votes, episode 56, with Chuckie Johnson, candidate for Washington County Sheriff. We dive straight into crime in Washington County, the rising drug problem in Hagerstown, and one of the toughest issues in Maryland today, holding parents accountable for the crimes that their children commit. It's direct, it's honest, and it's exactly the conversation that voters need to hear. Now let's get into it. To Mid-Maryland Votes. I am your host, Mark Flynn. With me is my co-host,
Ethan Lowen.
and we have a very special guest tonight. We have Chuckie Johnson, who is running for Sheriff of Washington County, and he's a returning guest. Thank you, Chuckie, and welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So how is the quest to be the next Sheriff of Washington County going for you?
I've never done this before, so to tell you I have a way to judge it, I don't. But I will tell you that it's been very positive, and there's been a lot of support and making a lot of new friends and entering in a lot of different circles that I've never been part of before.
So when is the primary, and then when is the actual election?
June of 26, and it'll be do or die in June.
Okay.
Sheriff
So
Albert
June, you get that's going to be the primary where you're going for the Republican nomination for Sheriff of Washington County.
That's correct.
And can you explain to us what Washington County is, what it encompasses, and what that job actually entails?
Sure. So Washington County, and for those who aren't familiar with sheriff's offices in Maryland, a lot of them, most of them all now are full service agencies. So they, traffic, general arrest, just normal law enforcement activities like you would see in any normal city, things of that nature, where a lot of other states, especially some surrounding states, and previously here in Maryland, we had some sheriff's offices who were basically just paper servers. They were sworn law enforcement, but their sole purpose was only to serve those papers and, serve arrest warrants, things of that nature.
Courthouse security and corrections.
Correct.
And they're county-wide. They also respond into the city when needed, right?
That's correct.
The city we're talking about is Hagerstown, of course, which is the biggest city in Washington County. What are some of the other crime hotspots in Washington County that you're eyeing up, and I'm sure you got some plans for?
So, of course, a lot of the major crime, if you will, and the bulk of the crime is stemming out of the city. However, there's no magical wall that keeps crime in the city, and the rest of us are safe out here in the county, because that's just not the case. So, those outlying areas surrounding the city are seeing just as much a rising crime as what you would have in certain parts of Hagerstown. So definitely a heavy focus on those. Offering support to Hagerstown, however, they need it as well, because just because it happens in the city and it's within those corporate boundaries, Washington County residents also have to visit the city, just like Hagerstown city residents are also Washington County residents. So it's we'll offer support to the Hagerstown Police Department however we can, as well as, of course, focus heavily on those outlying areas immediately surrounding the city.
Hagerstown makes up about 40% of the population, or maybe about 30% of the population of Washington County, I believe. And so there's a big difference in kind of the criminal activity inside of Hagerstown versus other places, which is how is that a partnership? Or do you guys just patrol the area? Do you have your own operations? How does that jurisdiction, if that's the right word, operate?
So in my experience, when I worked in Hagerstown, a couple years back, it was the county would come in and support us if we asked for help. We were calling for assistance, that type of thing. Other than that, they were passing through or driving around.
So they don't respond to calls in Hagerstown City, but they will back up Hagerstown City police officers when needed.
That's correct.
And you were, it needs mentioning that you were a Hagerstown City police officer for how long?
Just about 12 years.
And then now you work for the Frederick County Sheriff Department in the same basic venue. You're a police officer and a trainer down there.
That's correct.
Great. And so what is your relationship like with Chief Kiefer, who is the chief of the Hagerstown City Police? Because if you do become sheriff, you're going to have to work with this guy.
Correct. So I think I can work with anybody. So, personal differences of leadership styles, none of however that may look like, we definitely would have to work together, and I have no issue with that. I talk to Chief Kiefer when I see him, that type of thing. So there's no, animosity where we're not going to sit down at the table together.
Yeah. He's definitely a lightning rod for some controversy as far as his unwillingness to to participate in different programs, federal programs, immigration programs, things of that nature. So, and there are very much people out there who support Chief Kiefer and think he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then there's people who are critics. Of course, that's true of everybody in law enforcement. But it's good that you would be able to maintain a relationship with them. That's good because it's important.
The difference between an appointed police chief and an elected sheriff is, if elected sheriff, I have the ability to speak freely for the most part, right? Because I was put in there by the people and I answer to the people of Washington County.
No, we're seeing that a lot in Frederick right now, right?
Correct.
Because Sheriff Chuck Jenkins, it does participate in the 287G program, and because he's elected independently from the county council and the county council president, he doesn't have to listen to some of the nonsense.
That's correct. And, so, as the chief of police, no matter if it's, Hagerstown or Boonesboro, Smithsburg, wherever it may be, you are kind of at the beck and call of the mayor and council. So at any point in time, they could change the person in that seat, and without a contract of some sort. That is, what you're seeing with Hagerstown and a lot of the other surrounding smaller towns.
It's interesting to me that most of the elected sheriffs in Maryland are conservatives, not Democrats, and that the Democrats want to eliminate the elected officials for sheriffs around the state. That's very telling, isn't it?
It is very telling.
Yeah. So what do you see as a major crime issue up in Hagerstown and Washington County that you want to address?
Violent crime, of course, is much higher here in Washington County. And again, I keep putting this back on the city, but, the bulk of that comes out of the city. So violent crime. We also have the primary focus of my administration will be on quality of life crimes. It's easy to sit here and say we're going to be tough on crime. We're going to block up murderers and, people doing shootings and things like that, because that's the obvious. It's those quality of life crimes where, you're walking down the road and you're tripping over needles and plastic bags and that type of stuff. And that is no longer just secluded to the city of Hagerstown. Those outlying areas surrounding the city have experienced the exact same thing. If there's a couple of trees for somebody to nuzzle under, and that's what they're doing, and they're leaving their garbage behind and things of that nature. And that's just one of the issues. But this stuff with repeat offenders, these people who draw a lot of community resources from law enforcement and emergency services, things of that nature, this becomes a repetitive pattern, and it takes away from actual emergencies that are happening in the county.
And one of the things that I'm seeing more frequently now is people are posting on Facebook, social media, essentially videos of people that are on drugs and basically stumbling around or walking around, and the Walking Dead, the zombies is what many of us have come to call them. When you talk about quality of life issues, I mean, just children are seeing this in the middle of the day. There are needles that there's certain parts of place in Hagerstown where you can walk 30 feet and you can see literally 30 used needles on the ground. Are those the sorts of quality of life issues that you're thinking you can make an impact on?
I do. Those are some of them. There's also, just again, an outline. So you have outlying communities here who are experiencing their own crimes within their community. Well, to you and I may not seem to be the most important thing based on the severity of what's happening in other parts of the county. To those people who live in those communities, those are serious crimes to them. They're important to them because they live there. They're the ones that have to deal with it. So these nuisance neighbors, tenants of houses that, landlords are just collecting the money and they don't care what's happening there because they don't have to live there. Those things like that, we will do everything we can to make an issue of it to where either those people get evicted and relocated, or we will exhaust every resource within this county to see to it that we are able to at least offer some sort of relief to the people who are living in that type of dismay.
There is some debate, Chuckie, about the quality of life crimes and the enforcement of those, such as public urination and vagrancy and other things that affect the quality of life of people. And whether that has an impact on actual major crimes. What's your take on that?
I think it absolutely does, because when you're not wasting resources dealing with those things that, just like you just spoke about, then you have time and resources to focus on severe issues. So if you start from the bottom and work your way up, you're going to have more time and resources to focus on those severe crimes.
And there's a stretch of road that everyone in Hagerstown knows from a Sheets downtown. Yeah, it just goes by the McDonald's, and everyone knows exactly where I'm talking about if you're familiar with Hagerstown. And there was
it's called the Triangle.
The essentially started appearing in the Triangle, and then the determination was made to refer it to that, petty crimes or nuisance crimes.
Yep.
It just exploded within literally a couple months after the determination was made. It was okay for them to do it there. And now it's essentially become a universal issue. How does that get dealt with at this point?
So one of the big projects that I intend on working on and started to lay some groundwork for it already is relocating transient offenders. So when these people are dropped off in Hagerstown for whatever services they were dropped off for, or they were just dropped off in Hagerstown, Washington County, just because the other jurisdiction didn't want to deal with them. If they come here and they commit a crime, whatever that crime may be, they get charged. And when I say charged, that doesn't mean that we're physically putting handcuffs on them and we're dragging them off to central booking, that type of thing. I'm saying charged on paper. They get a court date at the very least. And in lieu of some, exuberant probation status that they would have to jump through hoops that would probably fail on a lot of their parts, just because the resources that we have available are very short term. These people have no family support here or peer support here. We would work through the sheriff's office with the courts, parole and probation, to find, through the sheriff's office, we facilitate, find family members, friends, whoever would essentially, for lack of a better word, accept custody of this person, because if we send them back to where they came from, they will then use the resources from their community, and they stand a greater chance of success for treatment, whether that be substance abuse treatment or mental health treatment, than with a family support or peer support than they do in Hagerstown, where they know nobody and they're just using the limited resources that we have available. And
yeah, we've done actually several shows, Chuckie, with advocates from the Hagerstown community that work with the homeless. They work with indigent people and people who are trying to recover from drugs and alcohol. And they actually say the exact same thing from a different vantage point, but they are that these people need to go back to where their resources are, leave the Hagerstown, Washington County resources for those people who are actually born here and not transients, or people dropped off from the prison system or what have you.
Absolutely. Now, I'm not saying that, the person who was dropped off here and they're using, one of the rehab facilities in the county and they're doing everything they can to get help and get clean. We're not relocating those type of people, right? We're talking about people who come out, they don't follow the program rules, or they find themselves in a position where they're going to get charged with something. Those are the people who we're looking to send back to the community they came from, so they can use their resources and they stand a greater chance for success with a family or peer support system.
Something we've talked about in the past is called the LEAD program. Is that something you're familiar with?
Vaguely.
So the LEAD program was that, law enforcement would go out with a social worker. They would interdict, basically give a choice to the transient human being who was, either using drugs or doing a low level crime. Either they get help right there and then with the social worker, or they go to jail. That's basically the LEAD program in a nutshell.
I understand the program. I understand the concept. Given that choice right then and there, what's the answer going to be? Right? Like it's oh sure, I'm going to go get help, right?
Yeah, that was kind of how the value of the program was. They're going to get some help, right? Now, how long that help actually lasts, how long they stay in the rehab, how long they stay in the sober house, is subject to interpretation. But at least you're getting them off the street at that point in time.
For a short period of time, we have limited resources for a lot of people who require resources. Again, whether that be substance abuse or mental health. If we're able to free up those resources for Washington County residents, to include the city of Hagerstown residents, people who actually live here or vested in this community, then we could take some of those short-term resources that we have and invest in long-term treatment. Because one thing we lack in this county is long-term treatment. Again, whether that's mental health or substance abuse. The long-term treatment programs in this county, we're definitely lacking as compared to some communities around us.
And the organizations that we have had on in the past that deal with individuals that are coming in from the prisons and reentering society, the question is that if it gets to the point where they're not ready, and as you said, there's just such a need for so few resources, can we even help everybody the way they need to be helped? Or is the solution really something else, such as essentially shutting down the drug trade?
So shutting down the drug trade obviously would be fantastic. However, the reality of that and what is within the realm of the sheriff of Washington County or the law enforcement within this county is also very limited in that capacity as well. When I say to completely shut it down. So at this point, we need to free up those resources that we have in this county for our residents and focus a lot on prevention. We spend a lot of time, money, and effort into treatment, and again, treatment for people who aren't ready yet. They're doing the court order, they're doing the, if you do this, you won't have to do this type thing, and of course, they're going to take the easy way out because that's just human nature. But if we can get into the schools, and it's another program that I have proposal and I have some people ready to help implement, that is early childhood education for prevention. And if you guys remember the DARE program.
Yes, I do. Very well.
So, for a quick description, if you think about the old DARE program that we did when we were kids, and you think about a Scared Straight program, now I'm not talking going into the jails and getting yelled at type thing. I'm talking realistic approach to education. So here's what drugs are. Here's what they do for you, right? Here's what they do to you. This is what happens if you end up addicted to these type of substances. And when I say the Scared Straight part, that is where we have people who are in recovery and all stages of that come and speak to the children, right? We have parents of children, parents who have lost children to substance abuse, come in and have a meaningful conversation with these kids in an early childhood education level. And that is where we start to see a decline in substance abuse, but it's generational. Like we have lost generations at this point, and we need to focus on preventing future generations from becoming addicted.
It's interesting you're talking about the DARE program and getting the education on the kids, because we are seeing an influx of violence in our schools and drugs in our schools. Down here in Frederick County, which is where I live, we're having some major issues in the Frederick school system. What kind of problems are you guys having up in Washington County with the schools, and what's your plan on addressing it?
So Washington County has, very similar problems that Frederick County has when it comes to the issues in the schools. One of the big programs that I have, again, ready to start to lay out is parent accountability, right? So the Juvenile Justice Reform Act of 22 really kind of, I won't say it handcuffs us, because, if you listen to law enforcement, across the state, we play a victim, right? Like, we can't do this because the state did this to us. And in my almost 20 years, that pendulum has gone back and forth where we can do this, we can't do that. They make our job a little bit harder. They do. This last go around with the reforms that they did, it made our jobs very hard, but it's not impossible to do our job. So we've been restricted on some of the things that we can charge kids for until certain ages, that type of thing. But if we can't hold kids accountable for their actions, who's accountable for their actions? Parents, right? So locally, we can pass ordinances to levy a financial or a monetary fine to the parents when their kids have habitual disruptions in school. We encounter them in things that would have normally been charged as a juvenile delinquent crime. Then if we're not able to hold the children accountable, then the parents need to be held accountable.
things such as holding parents accountable. There are already, like you said, laws on the books. I mean, even with truancy laws where students don't come to school, parents can be fined. I think it's $50 a day and possibly even a night in jail. But what many parents will tell you, they are in complete agreement with you. But there is in the schools, what they're being exposed to in the schools, what they're being exposed to just in the streets is the children are being pulled away from the families, and 100% parents should be held accountable for their children. But there are these other factors going on in society, and I guess that's obviously what we're discussing. When you say that there are limitations that you are put on as far as your ability to arrest individuals or even shut down the drug trade, what do you mean by that? Because what many parents would say, or many individuals would say, is, well, if we just shut down the drug trade, then 40% of all the problems that children have and that we have in our communities would go away. What has made that not possible, whereas it used to always be possible?
So, shutting down the drug trade, I'll tell you, when during President Trump's first term, I was working on a drug unit and I had informants, and we were going out and the informants were buying drugs for us on a regular basis, and it was plentiful. President Trump's first term, we shut down the border, and it got to a point where it was becoming hard for the informants to purchase heroin or fentanyl in the city of Hagerstown. It was becoming a challenge, right? So what happens after that? Those people are still addicted. They still need to have their fix, again, because they're not ready for that help, but they don't think they're ready for that help.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, the help is expensive. They don't meet the qualifications. They can't get into a place like that. So what do they resort to? Meth. That was when you start to see a rise in meth in this area, because meth was kind of rare in my time in Hagerstown to come across meth like it is now. Those guys are routinely pulling methamphetamines off the street on a regular basis now, where that didn't happen before. So where there's a will, there's a way, and that's not always a good thing. This is one of those times where it's not. You can shut down the heroin, the fentanyl coming across the border, things like that, but there's still things out there, chemicals, the compounds they'll put together, and they will make what they need to get the fix that they're looking for.
The drug trade has always been that way. I mean,
yes.
Law enforcement, we're always one step behind. Law enforcement, we flex, find, fill the hole. They find another hole, another compound, another. People are going to get high if they want to get high. That's the bottom line. Look at prohibition back in the 30s,
Right. And you start at the early childhood education level, where we show them the actual effects and the results of, if you live this lifestyle, you go down this rabbit hole, this is where you're going to end up. This is where your parents could end up. Right. So, but if we hold the parents accountable for the disruption, just like you said, like some of these kids, they come from household where their parents are actually trying, things of that nature. And those are not parents who would be getting fines either. Right. So if parents can show that they're making an effort to, parent their child, make a difference in their behavior, then you can't hold them at fault for trying, at the very least. But that's not the case with most of these children that we're coming across. The parents dislike law enforcement more than the people that you see on social media jumping around, hooping, hollering, things of that nature, right? So these parents dislike law enforcement. We're unable to deal with them. They teach that behavior to their children. So when those are the parents who need to be held accountable, because collectively, there's more of them now than there are the parents who are trying, and their kids are getting pulled away. So if we start holding the parents accountable who are not trying, not making an effort, then those parents will have to step up, or they will relocate to another area. And that's that simple. And that's where the fines would be levied from. There's the state is not involved in this, right? This is between law enforcement, the state's attorney's office, and the judges.
This is Chuckie. That would require a good relationship with the county council. How is your relationship with them?
As I get around with this campaign stuff, I get to know each and one of them a little better every time, and it's great. They're all good people, and hopefully
they're a majority conservative council as well.
Correct.
So they're pro law enforcement. They definitely support some of your ideas, I'm sure.
Yes, of course, my background from fire rescue since I was, 14 when I started running around the fire department, 16 started running active emergencies, that type of thing. So I have a different perspective when it comes to this, but this group of commissioners has done more for public safety than anybody that I can remember in the past 28 years.
That's encouraging. That's very encouraging.
They have done fantastic jobs. They made fantastic investments into not only the sheriff's department, but fire and rescue, EMS, that type of stuff. They have made good strides. Is there more to make? Absolutely. Could things be a little different on some other fronts? Absolutely. But when it comes to public safety, this group has definitely made a commitment.
And when you refer to, the sheriff's office working with the county commissioners, and that essentially you're referring to the need of leaders in the community, political leaders in the community working together. Obviously, a large part of that brings us back to Hagerstown for the multitude of reasons we've been discussing. The leadership in Hagerstown does seem to have a somewhat different view than how you're describing the county commissioners. I mean, one example is one of the city council members had ethics complaints filed against them, and it was related to dealings that they had with the police department. Obviously, there's a different view there. How do you propose to work with those types of situations where you are working with individuals that just have a different view than you or the county commissioners have on these issues related to crime?
So there's always common ground to be found. If you get in front of a room full of people, most people with that mindset are not going there. They're going to stump their feet and toot their horns, to appeal to that base, if you will. And it's no different than conservatives do the same thing, but you get everybody in a room together without the cameras and so on. You can come to an agreement. You can at least find some sort of common ground where maybe not everybody wins everything you're looking for, but you come to some sort of compromise where either we both walk away feeling like we lost or we both walk away feeling like we won.
Well, Chuckie, I'll tell you what, that is our watchword, common ground. That's what Mid-Maryland Votes is all about, bringing people from different backgrounds to talk like we used to be able to talk in the old days. We definitely appreciate having you on, Chuckie. We definitely wish you the best of luck with your campaign to be the sheriff of Washington County. Thanks so much for being with us tonight.
I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
All right. So this has been Mark Flynn with Mid-Maryland Votes, my co-host,
Ethan Lowen.
And we thank Chuckie Johnson for joining us tonight. If you liked what you saw, if you enjoyed the podcast, like it, comment, and share. Tell us how we're doing. Have a great night, and thank you from Mid-Maryland Votes. That was Chuckie Johnson on Mid-Maryland Votes, direct, honest, and focused on real solutions for Washington County. Crime, drugs, juvenile justice, and parent accountability are all big issues, and conversations like this are exactly why Mid-Maryland Votes exists. If you loved the episode, share it with a friend. If you hated it, share it with an enemy. We're equal opportunity entertainment. Like, follow, and share for more content like this, and we'll find you and see you next time on Mid-Maryland Votes.